Regarding my career, I was quite an accomplished doctor in Turkey. I performed some successful, globally first-of-its-kind surgeries. And these surgeries I performed were published in important journals as case reports. There's an immensely prestigious journal in the US. They made it to the cover of that journal.
In order to be able to conduct scientific research and serve as an educator, simultaneously I switched to an academic department. I started to work there. The spiritual satisfaction I experienced by treating patients was then combined with another sacred profession, that of an educator. This gave me a great deal of joy.
I've been a specialist physician for 25 years. I was an extremely favorite doctor in the city I was working in Turkey. I was treating around 15,000 patients a year, and I did not adhere regular work hours. I volunteered at many charities, including the Doctors Association.
I worked as a volunteer doctor at some projects carried out by the Ministry of Health. It was the kind of work that had no material benefits, but also required long hours of effort. I've performed more than 3,000 cataract, glaucoma, and other kinds of operations in Africa during that time.
On the night of July 15, I and my husband were on annual leave. We didn't have kids then. They immediately canceled all leaves. Everybody returned to work. Thus we went to Ankara fearfully. They started to suspend and fire people. One by one, everybody was receiving yellow envelopes. We expected them for ourselves too, but they didn't come at first. After a while, a person tipped my husband's name to the authorities. They slandered him with false accusations, such as being member to a terrorist organization.
10 or 11 days after July 15th, I learned that the police came to my house in Turkey while I was still in the US. They entered the house by breaking the door. They reported 2 items as evidence: a medal that my child won at the school he used to study, and a translation of the Holy Quran. Turns out, they were looking for me on the charge of being a member of a terrorist organization. There is still an arrest warrant against me.
The pressure on me was increasing too. Undercover cops were continuously monitoring my house. My private clinic was under constant inspection. My records were being audited by the Ministry of Finance. I was being fined.
I was in Africa during the time around July 15th. I was performing eye operations in Mali then. I cannot possibly express how I felt at that time, how tears were flowing down my eyes while I was operating. I had to be extra careful not to have those tears drop on the area of surgery.
A few months later, I was dismissed from my job with a government decree. About 2 months after that, my wife was also dismissed with another government decree. She was an instructor at a nursing school. Our house was on mortgage and they eventually took it from us. They blocked our bank accounts. And as if all that was not enough, a list of 130 people whose citizenships were speculated to be revoked came out circulating then. I am also on that list.
After the attempted coup of July the 15th, people's assets were confiscated. My clinic and my entire assets were confiscated as well.
I gave birth to a son. After the delivery, we went to my family's house with my child. We were staying there. One morning, the police raided our house, but obviously I wasn't there. My husband asked me to go to a notary and have a power of attorney issued. I went to the notary with my mother and my 55-day-old baby. I felt like the procedures took a bit too long. And as I was thinking about this, a tall young man approached me and asked my name. "Is this you?" he asked. I said yes. And he said, "You are under arrest now."
After my husband went to prison and I was put on an arrest warrant as well, our bank accounts and assets were confiscated.
I was arrested for being a terrorist. I was stigmatized as a terrorist in Turkey. Of course, it was too much to take in. How could I be a terrorist? Is it possible for people serving the humanity to be terrorists? I was staying in a cell of 8 people with murderers, drug addicts, child molesters, thieves, and you name it. I was having great difficulty there. I lost 20 pounds in a month because I could not eat. I was in depression and started to take antidepressant medications.
The prosecutor was at least that much soft-hearted that he allowed me to breastfeed my baby. My husband, mother, and baby followed me back. While they were following, I turned around and looked at them many times. I was feeling okay when I saw them, but then there was a dark path ahead of me. Right there, in that detention room, I shed lots of milk, but I'm sure that each drop of it, every last drop, there's justice in afterlife. We believe in this.
My children were being questioned, and their ages were only 8.5 and 15 at that time. My little daughter especially couldn't recover for 3 or 4 days after that.
I couldn't hear from my wife and children for 3 months, and after 3 months, I finally managed to talk to them on the phone. I'm grateful that I was able to learn that they were okay while they were struggling outside. I was struggling in the jail.
After my child was taken, I testified all day that day. They took me to a hospital. The whole day passed like this. After they put me in that narrow place in the evening, I felt miserable. Later, some people came again. They took me somewhere for unofficial testimony. There was this person who started to take my testimony, but this time it was different than the usual interrogation. He talked to me in a casual manner and approached like a friend. He said, "I also have a child. I went on duty once and we stayed away from each other for 1 month. It was so difficult. Would you like to raise your child in prison?" That was traumatizing for me. And it is a big injustice. Asking that to me, to a mother, is extremely unfair.
It is ridiculous that we are referred to as members of a terrorist organization. Shame on all those who have slandered us, the doctors who have performed this many successful operations and devoted themselves to their patients.
I always use a cane while walking. Worse, I need assistance and support from a person. Probably in 5 years, I'll need a wheelchair. First, I have an ongoing medical issue, and secondly, as a doctor, it is too difficult to bear the accusations against me since I could have nothing to do with terrorists and terrorism.
We had hard times as a family. My child was having trouble because of not being able to attend college. He was upset because of being separated from friends and his school. He was crying every day. Of course, it was hard for them. My mother, whom I loved more than myself, passed away. I couldn't go to her funeral. It was her last wish, though. To see me and her grandchildren was her last wish. And she passed away without being able to fulfill it.
My mother in Turkey was suffering from cancer and she had only a few months to live. I couldn't go and visit her, and my lovely, dear mother died 5-6 months later. I couldn't attend her funeral. In that difficult, distressing period, not being able to attend my mother's funeral wounded me deeply. I mean, this was a part of our destiny. These hard days as well, but I say it's worth it after all. I never despair and I won't. Thanks be to Allah.
The prosecutor pushed me a lot the next day, but fortunately, they freed me following the interrogation. We then decided to leave. We were going to go somehow. After making the arrangements, we reached the border. They asked us to put the baby in a bag. Unfortunately, can you imagine? I had to agree to what they wanted. They said there's no other way. And because there was no going back for us, we put the baby in the bag, giving him some sedatives. That is how we had him cross. But after crossing, the feeling of freedom at that moment was priceless.
I was hoping that once I was out of Turkey, everything would be fine. Unfortunately, every step I took forward made me feel their cruelty more strongly and intensified the pain that I felt inside.
My son is both my hero and the person who helped me shoulder the difficulties because he gave me hope. Thank God, with the presence of my son, my hero, my beliefs were not all destroyed.
I'm lucky, at least I regained my freedom. But in Turkey, thousands of people are not free, and unfortunately, they're still held in prisons. I consider myself lucky in that respect.
My wish and prayer is that our brethren also find peace as soon as possible. Regaining their freedom is the most important of all, and reaching the bright, good days when their innocence will be recognized. This is my only wish. Because, you always have those innocent people at one corner of your mind. I always think of those people. Where are they now? What kind of difficulties are they experiencing? That gives me serious pain. I mean, may Allah help and be with them. May He help and be with all of us. God willing, I hope the good days will come soon.
Thankfully, we're believers, and thankfully we believe that ease would follow every hardship. This situation in which people who have not committed the tiniest of crimes or illegal activity were forced into. Our only wish is for all this to be fixed as soon as possible.